Well, for the next 27 minutes or thereabout, I will be playing notes to a special assistant to the Ondo State Governor and Media, Mr. Gboyega Kimoyo. We call him Garo. Good to have you on Setting the Record Straight.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning to all our listeners in Ondo State and further afield.
All right. Now, let's get straight to business because there are so many things to talk about. And, of course, one that will interest an average worker in Ondo State is to know the latest about the salary thing. We gathered that government's meeting with labor leaders yesterday was deadlocked. What's the latest about the salaries now?
Well, yes, it was reported as being deadlocked, so that's correct. We've had a series of meetings, hours and hours of negotiations and deliberations with Labour. Unfortunately, the session was closed yesterday evening and is to resume at 10 a.m. on Thursday, that's tomorrow. We're hopeful that there will be a resolution in sight and light at the end of the tunnel. We have extensively come on to air in the last 1 month to explain the position of government, to also give some inferences as to what has been discussed with Labour. Mr. Governor has met not just with the Labour leaders, but has also met with the workers to explain the situation. But the general public, from my own investigations going into markets, motor parks, bus stops, newspaper stands, the general public doesn't really understand what's been going on.
So what's going on?
And maybe that's because a lot of grammar is being bandied about. I nearly didn't make this program this morning, even though I got your invitation to come along, because of a crisis that's brewing on my street. Okay. And if I can use the crisis to explain the situation in the country, in the state, with the workers and the salaries, maybe the ordinary individual at home will begin to understand and appreciate a lot more what is going on. I live here in Akure,
Okay.
and I live on a very popular street just off Elisha Road, which is called Governor's Close, and I know a lot of people will know it. There are only 36 houses on the street, 18 on the right and 18 on the left. And I've got a lot of children, maybe because I love children, boys and girls. My children are hungry, and they've come to me and they've said, "Dad, Father, it is your responsibility to provide food." I've got children who are actually working. I've got children who are still in school, and I've got a few toddlers. But they said, it's my responsibility as the father of the house to provide food. Do you know that the children have refused to eat since Wednesday of last week? So it's now 7 days of an enforced hunger strike in my household.
Wow.
Over the weekend, I had to budge and say, look, these children are going to kill themselves if they don't eat. What is going on? So I went down and called a meeting of all the fathers on the street. At the meeting, they were telling me that, look, it's the same thing in their own household. The children have not been eating. Why? I know in my own case that for the last 2 years, there's been a considerable decline in my income. Not because I'm not hardworking, but that's just the reality of the economic downturn in the country. The figures don't match up anymore. My children used to enjoy pounded yam, amala, gari, with chicken and fish, and they're still saying now that unless I provide those exotic meals that they've been used to for the last 7 years, at least that they can remember, that they're not going to eat the akamu and akara that I'm providing for them now. And they said furthermore, I'm only providing it 1 meal a day, that they're not going to accept it. And that's why they've gone on strike. And I said this hunger strike is not going to work. It's not going to help. Why? Because at the end of the day, you're going to contract other illnesses. We're going to end up in hospital. The money we don't have to provide food on the table is now going to end up in the hospital treating malaria, treating ulcer, treating starvation and malnutrition. We're going to need to buy drugs to solve those problems. And I'm telling my children, and I'm pleading with my children.
Sorry for breaking into your flow.
Yes.
Can't you, still going with that analogy, can't you as a father consider the option of borrowing somewhere to, make your children feel fine?
My brother, I went and met all the other fathers on the street. And I said, can you borrow me? They said even they are in similar situation and crisis. They've not been able to feed their children. There's nowhere for us to go. Okay, let's go to granddad. Let's go to granddad. At least he has a responsibility to bail us out. We go to our own fathers and say, bail us out when we have this crisis. My father is owing me money for all the work he asked me to do for him last year. He promised he will pay. He hasn't paid yet. I went to him last month and said, Dad, I need this money desperately so I can feed the children. He said, you know what? I'll come back to you by September. I said, by September, my children will all be gone. He said, look, the earliest he can do something is September. And it's not helpful. I asked other fathers, I said, how are you solving this problem? One of the fathers said, look, he has told the children if they don't eat, that's their problem. I'm off to Lesser Hajj in Saudi Arabia. Only for me to learn this morning that he got to the airport in Abuja and he was refused travel.
Why?
They said from Abuja that he cannot travel. They told him that his instructions from above. He's not allowed to go. He has to go back to his house and solve his problem and make sure that his children eat. Can you imagine? He had bought his ticket. He had checked in at the airport. He was going through immigration control. This is one of my neighbors from Kogi. He's the chief exec in Kogi. He was stopped at the airport and returned home. That's the nature of the country that we're living in now. Another one of these fathers, I asked him, I said, how are you managing your own affairs? He said, look, he has told the children, if they don't eat, they're going to jail. And guess what? He carried out his threat. He sent them to be locked up. He said that will teach them a lesson. I can't do that. I love my children. And my children have always been serviceable for me. Whenever I've had straws, they've always answered my call. And when the going was good, they were well fed. They were well looked after. But I'm pleading with them now. I'm pleading with them that, look, please, please, take what is on offer now. It may be small. It may be what you are not used to and what you have not been accustomed to for the last 7 years. This is the crisis that's going on. And I break it down using this analogy because a lot of our people don't realize. They believe the lies that they are hearing. That I have some money somewhere and I just don't want to feed the family. Why would I do that? I put all my cards on the table. I've said to them that this is the situation. Unfortunately, what I used to earn is no longer available. I have to cut my coat according to my size. I don't want to get rid of any of the children. They're mine. I love them. I cherish them. And that is the situation that Mr. Governor is in. He made a pledge to the people of Ondo State right at the beginning of this year that in spite of what I can see, economic downturn and crisis that we're going to face, the crunch of recession that is ahead of us, I will not retrench one worker. He made that pledge and he has stood by it through thick and thin. All that we can expect now is some cooperation from our workers, that in spite of the hardship that they are also going through, we need to reason together, negotiate, and reach a position that is palatable for the state. Not necessarily for one individual, but for the state. And this is another plea again to the workers as we go to the negotiation table again tomorrow to say, look, you're aware of the full facts. We can't invent money. We're not allowed to borrow because Debt Management Agency has said, don't borrow. The banks are not inclined to release any money to any state to go against the directives that have been given by the federal government and the Debt Management Office. So there's no way you can go and borrow. The only agency in government now that can borrow is the federal government. And they say that they're extending a hand of friendship to the states. They're going to give us an assistance by way of 1.3 billion for the first 3 months and 1.1 billion for another 9 months to cover a 12-month period. Now, in our state, Mr. Governor has already confirmed that in spite of the stringent conditions, I've already signed on the dotted line that I will accept this money.
To access this fund.
To access the funds and to use it to augment what I'm able to get from federation accounts and to add it to what I'm able to generate internally. Add everything together and let us use it to offset the liabilities. First of all, the public servants in the state. And they total about 68, 69,000. But we have to also bear in mind that Mr. Governor swore an oath to protect, defend, and enhance the welfare of the people of Ondo State. That includes those who are residents, that includes indigents, it includes visitors, and it totals a population of in excess of 3 million. His responsibility is for a lot of people. And guess what? That akamu and akara, if the children do not eat it at home, there are other competing interests. There are other people who will want to eat that food though. So we need to really reason together. I'm not saying that the workers are not entitled to the backlog of 6 months pay. Guess what? Even us political appointees haven't been paid for 6 months. So we're all in the same boat.
If the governor is attending to something.
Absolutely not.
Because, you know, there was this saying then, when the governor proposed payment to health workers, that the governor is saying that because he's a medical doctor. And that's the reason for his bias.
He's come out to say, Mr. Governor has come out to say that, look, he suggested that from a humanitarian point of view. Because if we face the reality, when hospitals are closed and medical staff are on strike, the implications to the economy, to society, are more devastating than if lawyers decide to go on strike. If lawyers go on strike, all that will happen is that, if lawyers and courts go on strike, all that will happen is that the cases will not be heard.
Put on hold.
They'll be put on hold 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, and then eventually the cases will be heard. The repercussions and the consequences for the society are not as devastating as when a hospital is closed. People cannot go and get treatment. Don't forget, they can't afford the treatment. So they're looking for that free facility, which is the responsibility of government. Now, the free facility is not available. They go to the private, who are overwhelmed with cases, who in many instances do not have the relevant expertise to deal with these emergencies. And what we have are unnecessary deaths. And they've been recorded, and they've been reported, and there are so many of them. And ironically, when eventually we're able to pay the arrears, when eventually we're able to pay the arrears of these medical workers, will they be able to bring back the lives that are lost? It's impossible. And that is why Mr. Governor suggested that a critical area of the economy, that is a critical service that's being provided by medical workers, perhaps it would make sense. What we have available from last month is sufficient to cover the bill of the medical workers. So maybe it makes sense for them to be paid so that we can ease the tension. But of course, he left it to the labor leaders to advise their people as to what would be the best for us to do. He doesn't want to take, you know, a dictatorial decision that these are the people that should be paid. And he has certainly come out to clear the air to the workers. I was there when he had that meeting to explain that it's not out of bias to his own constituency, but it's looking at the big picture. I drove down Obadeshida this morning and looked at the left and the right and the amount of refuse that has accumulated. That is another epidemic. That's another disease waiting to explode on the streets and the cities of Akure, talk less of other areas within the state. So we need really to face the reality that something must be done. Workers cannot have their full demand. It's just not possible because the money is not on the table.
Here and there.
We have